Hi everyone. I just wanted to talk a little bit about what workflow actually is. So if you have not worked in healthcare or don't have any experience in using electronic health records or working in informatics at all, clinical workflow, many people would say, is really the lifeblood of implementation for health information technology applications. And what that really means is workflow is how things get done and travel in a clinical setting. So what are the things? The things are the patients, the things are information and data. So for example, if you think about when you go in for a healthcare encounter, you walk in through a particular door, you might go to a desk, you might sign in and so forth, and then you might sit down and wait for your name to be called. So that's sort of the beginning of the process and sort of begins the encounter. Now, behind the scenes, of course, that person at the front desk is entering your information, is clicking some boxes off in the screen, and creating new workflow now of data. So patient has entered the building, the check-in person has identified that person and notified sort of the next stage, the system that you are now progressing. Your data is now being transferred. So for example, just a very sort of brief overview example, is you go to get an x-ray of your knee. It's been bothering you, it's hurting, you want to get it checked out. So your doctor writes an order for an x-ray, which is a requirement to get an x-ray. You need a physician order. So the physician sends that electronically over to the local hospital, outpatient department, in radiology. So that order arrives electronically in their system and creates an encounter. Now there's an order. So the order will generate then typically a plan of action, if you will. So that order might be right knee, 2 plain x-rays, or 3 views. Whatever the physician ordered now sets up a chain reaction. So it informs the registration person what they need to do to make sure that you're checked in properly, that they have verified your insurance, that your insurance covers such a thing. It also sets into play orders for the radiology technician to actually take the films, and they have very specific protocols now of how to do that x-ray. For example, that would be different from an angle x-ray. You position the patient just so. Is it weight-bearing or non-weight-bearing? So there's a whole template, there's a whole set of rules that happen as soon as that order is reached in the hospital. So the order's there, then the patient's there, and now we can take the x-ray, right? So what comes next? All of those things are part of clinical workflow. And they're really the lifeblood of the hospital. And it's really important when you are working with health information systems or technology or implementing a new application for a particular department in an organization, that you think really carefully about workflow. How does it currently work? How do people get from A to B? How does data get from A to B? Where are the stations along the way? Who verifies it along the way? Who has to do activity on that data? Who ultimately owns it or is in charge of it? So that's what clinical workflow is. And it's really important that you understand the current state of workflow, you understand the reason and the purpose for potentially changing that workflow, and you really need to have all the stakeholders involved, because disrupting someone's routine, as you probably well know, is really fraught with danger. People don't like change, and some people will do everything they can to interrupt or somehow provide a barrier to that change. So you want to make sure everyone who's involved in that process is on board, understands the change, is part of it, has input on it, to be ultimately successful. So that, in a very brief nutshell, is what clinical workflow is.